Welcome to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McLernan, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about two very important things. Number one, the stories shared here are often gritty, raw, and vulnerable, and very likely will include speaking about sensitive topics suited for a mature audience. Number two, this podcast is also broadcast live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So on whatever platform you follow myself or Freedom Nutrition Coaching, you have the opportunity to participate in this discussion during the live stream. And we encourage your participation both by commenting and asking questions. And so this podcast is about exploring the stories that take place between the before and after photos, not just in the realm of weight loss, but in all areas of life. So let's dive in. All right, I'm super excited to have Tyler on the show today, not just because he is Canadian, but he's Albertan and lives just up the road from me, as in like an hour and a half up the highway. So it's nice to interview someone that's so close to me. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing well. I thought the same thing. I'm like, man, we should just do this in studio. Let's make that happen.
Yeah. Well, my studio happens to be a room in my basement that isn't entirely soundproof, so I have this like sound damping backdrop behind me to kind of make it work. But
likewise. I can touch it.
I can touch mine. It's like literally behind me. So for those listening, you can't see, but I was just tickling my backdrop a little bit there. Backdrop liked it. All right, man. Well, we're going to tell your story today, which I'm excited about because you have just a kind of a crazy story. There's a lot of like highlights and lowlights in this story. And so I think it's really cool. But before we dive into that, where are you at nowadays? What are you doing? And if people wanted to connect with you, where would they find you?
Best place is my website, SeanTylerFoley.com. Sean is spelled the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley.com. Tell them Tyler sent you, and we got a whole bunch of free goodies for anybody who comes from before and after. Like so if they click on that, we'll be happy to give it away to them, John. But right now, most of what I'm doing is public speaking and super meta too. Speaking on speaking, most of it is promoting the book, The Power to Speak Naked. Number one.
Is that you on the cover?
Wouldn't it be awesome if that was?
I was like, no. So for those listening, he's holding up a copy of his book, and I'm like, man, that should be in the cover, and there should be like a little tease, like where there's just a little bit of glute showing.
Yeah. Hey, so I'm actually banned from promoting the book on Jeff Bezos' site because it breaches their nudity clause. So I'm sure if I got even more cheeky with it, there would be some issues.
So you can't actually sell it on that site. So you have to promote it in other ways.
Yeah, I can sell it on their site. I'm not allowed to advertise it on their site, which makes selling it on their site ridiculously hard. But the good news is it brought me to a wonderful website. Unfortunately, us as Canadians, we don't get to use it, but it's called bookshop.org. And what a phenomenal organization that is. It connects book buyers with their local book retailer, so their mom and pop independent bookstore in the United States. And through that, the local bookstore gets the sale. They still ship it the same way that you would through Jeff's site, like it still comes to your door like it's online shopping. But the book titles on it are just a fraction cheaper through it. So like my book regularly retails for $17.95 US, and through bookshop.org you get it for $16.50. Okay. And bookshop.org takes a percentage of the proceeds and pools it into a fund that local book retailers can apply to for aid and funding. So I think they've raised like $20 million so far. So yeah.
I had never heard about that. That is amazing.
No, neither had I until I was like, screw you, Mr. Bezos, and had to come up with alternatives. And Barnes & Noble and up here in Canada, anyone who has Plum Rewards and goes to Chapters or Indigo can pick up my book just in store. But for our online shoppers, you can get it anywhere that you want.
Yeah. So without diving into too much detail, you read about like the power to speak naked. Have you ever spoken naked?
Yes.
I mean, I think all of us have spoken naked, but I mean, have you ever spoken in front of an audience while naked?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I have. I did it once for charity and would do it again for any charity who asks. Was, I am, if you ask my wife, I am a pure exhibitionist. I am a proud nudist. And as culturally shunned as it is, I will do anything naked when asked. But I only do it for good causes. I'm not just going to
Right.
go around and start doing my talk naked as a gimmick.
Yeah.
But I did do it one time for charity, and was really happy with it, and would do it again if asked to support any local charity that needed it.
That's fantastic. And so I guess like, and it is like a ballsy move.
Literally.
Yeah. I'm like, I want to slip as many puns in there as I can. The first time that you gave a talk naked, what was that like? Like, did you have some nerves doing it, or were you like, this is amazing because a whole bunch of people are staring at my naked body?
Not amazing. A whole bunch of people are staring at my naked body, but it was definitely exhilarating. I don't get nervous before talks, but there was a definite different energy. It was cold too. Oh man,
Okay.
not as
Yeah.
an excuse, but it
Yeah.
was cold,
Hey,
and
this is Canada.
it is Canada, and almost it doesn't matter where you are in the world because of all the lighting. They tend to make theaters very air conditioned, and so it
Mm-mm.
was. I remember when I get off stage, my body kind of does reverse nervous energy. So like I'm so pumped to be on stage that when I get off, I get my body, instead of flushing hot, gets really cold, and I start
Mm.
to shake. So afterwards, like first of all, I didn't do a meet and greet until I could get clothes back on.
Yeah.
But
Right. Right.
like I was just like, uh, it outwardly I probably looked like a ball of nerves, but the reality was I was having an auto response inside of my body that just I was just shaking cold.
Sure. Because
But
you're
beyond
cold, all the
that,
blood goes back to your internal organs and away from your
yeah,
extremities. Yeah.
yeah, and but beyond that, it was. I mean, it was a really fun thing. The audience was more um, awkward and nervous about it than I was.
Yeah.
It was a 45-minute talk. It was done. I had given the talk basically the week before, and I'd been
Mhm.
heckled in the crowd. A guy was like, "Take off your clothes, naked boy," and I'm like, "Ha ha ha! Nobody wants to see that." He's like, "I want to see that." I'm like, "Sir, what you do in your own time is right." Like I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was trying to address it, and he wouldn't stop. And I was like, "Listen, if
Um.
you're so bent on seeing me naked, I'll do it, but I'm not doing it for free or for the price of the ticket that you've paid. I need this to do something." So I always book venues for 2 dates as an
Okay.
insurance, just in case something cancels.
Right.
And so I had booked the venue out by for another week as insurance, and so I had the booking still. So I was like, "Listen, I have the booking at this venue a week from tonight. So if everybody has to agree to this. If everybody's willing to pay an obnoxious amount of money that I will then donate the proceeds to charity, um, I will come and I will give this talk again naked." And I was like, "So who's on board?" And everybody raised their hands. I didn't think they would, for one. I thought that
Right.
was going
Yeah.
to be my
Yeah.
quick way, and everybody would be like, "No." Everybody's like, "Charity, naked, do it." And so
Right.
we had, it was like 200 or 300 people in the
Yeah.
auditorium. And so we went and we sold tickets at the back. And I don't think
Yeah.
everybody purchased, but the majority of people purchased. Like we raised, what was it? Almost $25,000
Wow. Yeah.
to donate to the charity. And that was fantastic. And, I had to deduct expenses from that. So we probably
Sure.
had 280 to 300 people purchase the ticket. So it must have been almost everyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went and did it, and the audience, you could tell where they were like, the gimmick got old quick.
Right.
So I actually ended up standing behind the podium for the last 40 of the 45 minutes.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and not for my own pride or shame, because I would have walked that stage
Just strutted
gladly, and
around. Yeah.
yeah, I would have done it. But to make everybody else feel comfortable, because I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you're getting what you asked for, and I don't think you were prepared for what you were getting."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's quite something, man. To do that. Do you remember like what was the talk about?
it was on the power to speak naked.
Okay.
So I was talking. So my keynote presentation is about, first of all, vulnerability.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talk about a lot is that the thing you're afraid to say is very likely what your audience needs to hear. And the
Love
talk
that.
is structured around exposing the raw, naked truth, being authentic, which
Mhm.
I don't like the word authentic. I think it's an overused
For sure. It's
buzzword
cliched.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that authenticity is synonymous with self awareness. And so you really need to know who you are at your core, so that things don't shake you. And so you can, and I tell people, it's not that I want you to take off your clothes and speak on stage. What I want is for your message to be so powerful, so captivating, and so compelling that your audience isn't paying attention to what you're wearing or what you are, that they are transported to another place, and all the rest melts away. So a naked and raw presentation where you don't need a PowerPoint, you don't need laser lights, you don't need AV, you don't need, you don't need a DJ spinning in the corner and keeping the crowd pumped up.
Right.
All those things can enhance an experience, but they're not necessary.
Right.
And so that's the essence of the talk. So, to be giving that messaging about, there was a little bit of support with that. And actually, if I could redo it again, I would actually restructure the talk differently. And I would actually come out on clothed and then start to peel back the layers to expose the raw, naked truth. It was a missed opportunity. I didn't do it. I wish I had. But people paid to see Tyler naked, so I wanted to be Tyler naked, and so I just came out naked. Hey, and everybody's like, "Whoa! Oh, he really did it!" And so I think if I could do it again, I would restructure it. But that, the essence of the talk is
well, you can do it again.
I can do it again. Anybody, any charity who's listening out there, if you need to raise money quick, say we have this guy who's willing to do this crazy thing to support money for us, and I will come and I will do that talk.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. And I think so. And the book is maybe an expansion on your keynote presentation. Would that be accurate?
Yeah. So the two kind of developed hand in hand. They really came from a series of training videos that I had put together. That came from a series of coaching conversations that I had with my private clients. So I found that I was saying the same thing over and over and over again. And when you're saying the same thing over and over again, there's probably a course there. So I developed the course. The course then became a keynote presentation, and the keynote became popular enough that a couple of large event organizers had asked if I would come onto their stage and present it there. The problem was, in order to do it, they had asked that I have a book. I had the course to sell, but I didn't have the book. And so they were like, well, how quickly can you get together a book? And I'm like, I don't know. How quickly can I transcribe the video from from these training sessions? So we stripped the audio from the training videos, transcribed those, recompiled it a little bit, and then that became the first edition of the book.
Awesome. That's super cool, man. And it's crazy to think that this is like what you're doing. So if we go back into your story, because there's some bumps in the road here. Are you born and raised in Alberta?
I am, as a matter of fact, a proud Albertan. I can't say that I'm born and raised in Calgary, but I was born and raised just outside.
Okay, yeah, and it wasn't very long in your young life before you had your first dose of real adversity.
Adversity and triumph at the same time. So when I was 6 years old, I got to be on stage for the first time, but that came right on the heels of my father passing away. And, that became a very formative part of who I am as a human being, because two of my most distinct and vivid memories of my childhood are auditory. The one is being on stage the first time, getting a standing ovation, and the sound of the crowd. And then when you hear the sound, the feeling that you get internally of just pure pride and self-accomplishment, and there's an energy too. Like it's weird, because a standing ovation is not just for you. It's a release of energy for everybody. And so it's this real cathartic and shared experience for everyone. There's just this energy that is you can't be duplicated. And the first time I experienced that was actually at a Christmas play, like a elementary school pageant. I got to play Joseph in the pageant, in the little nativity that got set up, and the crowd just went wild. I ended up doing this weird thing. Like, the three wise men are all dressed up, right?
Yeah.
And they come, and when you're in elementary school, the three wise men dressed up are in bathrobes,
right? Yeah.
And they're bringing the gold, frankincense, and myrrh I can never
Mer?
pronounce mer correctly. Um, and they're bringing these gifts, but again, it's an elementary school play, so the gifts are like boxes wrapped in paper. So
Right, right,
that's
yeah.
that's what would have happened 2,200 years ago,
Right, yeah.
or 2,000 years ago. And so I got these presents, and we've got this manger in front of us, which is just a cradle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Not a manger. And the funny thing is, I was confused because I grew up on a farm, so I know
Right.
what a manger is. I'm like, this is a cradle. This isn't a manger. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
This is a doll cradle, right? So we have this cradle and this little it's a doll, like it's plastic and it's sitting
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Anyway, the wise men give me the gifts, and I place the gifts very gently, very lovingly on top of baby Jesus's head. And so exactly, that was the reaction.
Yeah.
Everybody's laughing because little 6-year-old Tyler is obviously not understanding the gig here. And
Right, right.
if it was reality, poor baby Jesus would have unfortunately had SIDS, and so we're not helping with that.
Right,
And
right.
so everybody is and they're laughing and I'm laughing, and so we're all having a good time. And then at the end of it, me and my best friend who was playing Mary, Lisa, give the bow, and they all stand up and cheer. Whoa, good job, Zach, good job. And it
Yeah.
was like it was rewarding. And that would have been early December, mid-December of 1985.
Yeah.
And you fast forward to February 1986, and February 10th, my dad passed away in a single vehicle, um, um, motor vehicle incident. And the I found out about it. I was actually reading comic books on the toilet in the bathroom, and I could hear the bathroom was beside the stairwell to the side entrance, and there was a knock at the door, and Mom came down, and I could hear this muffled conversation, and then my mom made this sound that was just a wailing, guttural, injured animal in the wilderness sound that just reverberated through the house. Like, I remember sitting there with the comic book and like just this chill running down my spine. Like it felt like the walls wanted to crumble from the sound that my mom made. And so for the rest of my life, within a very short period of time too, like less than 3 months, like we're not even talking a quarter of a year, I heard a sound that I have chased for my entire life, and I heard a sound that I have tried to avoid for my entire life. And when I look at all of the decisions that I've made that have led from 6-year-old Tyler to 43-year-old Tyler, almost all of them on either a conscious or subconscious level are as a direct result of chasing one sound and avoiding another.
I think that's quite a fascinating thing. And what kind of relationship up till now, or like what sort of memories do you have of your dad?
Well, really good ones. All of my
Yeah.
memories with my dad, and I have memories of my dad going back to like 11 months old. Most people don't really remember things until they're apparently 2 or 3. It drives my wife crazy. She's like, "You can't possibly remember that." I'm like, "No, Mom, remember this thing." And then we'll pull up the picture, and they're like memories. They're not memories that are triggered by pictures. They're memories that I have, and then Mom will be like, "Oh, I think we have a picture of that." And then we go, and she's like, "Is this what you're talking about?" And I'll be like 11 or 13 months old.
Yeah.
But like I remember playing in the backyard with my dad, him building. We didn't have a tree that would be appropriate for a tree house, so we built like this kind of fort on stilts so that I could have like a tree house. I remember the first time doing an emergency evacuation ERP test with him, because he was an educator and a teacher, and so they used to do fire drills all the time at school.
Right. Yeah.
And I think at some point somebody had come and said to him, "What's your thing at home?" And it kind of rattled him because he had a young family. I have a younger sister. And so I remember him taking me out, and we had old storm windows, because our house was built in the 1880s. So we had these storm windows, and one of them wasn't fitting anymore. And so he took me out, and we had to showed me how to smash in glass panes, and then put a blanket in to pull out all the shards and make it safe so that I could crawl out. So if I ever needed to get out of my window, I knew how to do it safely. And
Wow.
I remember just before he passed away, my sixth birthday would have been the 31st of July. And he took me hiking. And I've actually taken my daughter on the same hike. I remember being fascinated because we could go up this moraine, and there was a kind of a valley that sheltered a big pile of snow. So for
Mm.
me to be able to go and like play in snow on the 31st of July was fascinating. I remember we hiked up
Yeah.
it, and we had a lunch, like some trail mix or something up there, and then came back down, stopped off at Chief Kanicki's on Highway 1 on the way
Okay.
in by the Morley Reserve, and had a buffalo burger for
Wow. Yeah.
supper. And like, and I have tons of memories, but him reading The Hobbit to me on road trips across Canada. Most of his family is back east in Nova Scotia, and so we'd go for like to visit family. He was a teacher. He had the summer off, so we'd go for these long,
Yeah. Yeah.
long road trips. And yeah, I have tons of memories of him.
Which is amazing. Yeah. And so we're gonna. I want to fast forward a little bit here, but I'm thinking like what in the aftermath of that, how did 6, 7, 8, sort of 9-year-old Tyler, how do you cope with that? And I imagine friends and schoolmates and things like that. Like, how did they react to that?
Well, I think they were too young to really fully understand it. I remember one uh, like school bully, picking on me because I didn't have a dad. And I was self-aware enough to know that he came from a family of divorce.
Hmm.
And I'm like, my dad was taken from me. Your dad left. And
Oh,
oh man, looking back, I feel really like 43-year-old me feels bad about it. But at the time, like I've always been um, very observant in the world. And I don't know if that's because I grew up in theater.
right,
And like I've always been like an old soul. Um, and like you could just see like the inner workings. And I would have been about 10 years old at the time. And that kid, yeah, I cut him down real quick. The funny thing is me and him ended up becoming friends. Like we like through junior high and high school, we really kind of bonded. Like he ended up kind of becoming a protector of me. Not that I needed one. Like I was
right,
always
right. Yeah.
the funny thing is I was always the really small kid. I was the runt of the litter, but
Yeah.
I was always very popular, so I didn't really get bullied. And I think when I stood up to him, he realized that he didn't need to bully me. And I don't know. It was yeah,
Yeah.
but I think the kids didn't know how to react. And being that young, I didn't really know how to process it. I didn't actually uh, really
Like,
grieve my father's passing until June of the sixth grade, and it was triggered by winning the top student award in elementary. Um, I, there was a few of us, and we were all sons of teachers, and so we were all very scholastically inclined. And I think myself, I think I was, again, didn't realize it at the time, but I was trying to make my father proud of me, post-mortem kind of thing,
mhm, mhm.
and
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always felt that he's always been around. Like I still feel his presence with me. So I think I had something to prove, a little bit more so because the other guys could hide from their dad.
Mhm.
I've always felt like my dad can see everything that I do, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's helped with my moral compass too. Like your dad's watching you. So if you're going to be doing this thing, make sure you're doing it. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to own this thing, Tyler, because you're not the only one in the room. And,
Right.
so it really, really pushed me scholastically, and I ended up winning this award. And end of year assembly there, all the parents got invited, and there was just this, the gymnasium was packed, and they seat you, the younger kids are in the front, and when you're in grade 6 you're the big kids, so you get to sit at the back. I remember
Right. Yeah.
sitting with my friends, it was Liam and Dave and Jarnell, and we were all sitting around. And I remember Jay leans into me, he's like, "You won the award." And I'm like, "How do you know?" He's like, "I can read your name backwards on the certificate." And I'm like, if you could read my name backwards, you're smarter than me. You won the award, kind of thing. And then sure enough, they call my name. And as I stood up to walk around the edge of the gymnasium, all the parents were lined up along the side. And my mom was sitting there and she was like all happy and she was crying. And as she walked down, and as I walked past her, the seat beside her was empty. And I don't know why the seat was empty. You know, it just didn't matter, but I saw it. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, seeing my mom, first of all, being so overwhelmed with pride. And, you know, she had the really happy tear and she's clapping for me. And then seeing this empty chair and being like, huh, there's nobody sitting there. My dad should be sitting there. My dad isn't here to see this. My dad won't see me get this award. He's not going to see me commence from grade 6. He's not going to see me. And I just went on this thought train that left a station like it was a Japanese commuter, and it just whoosh. And that bullet train did not slow down. And so, you know, my father's not going to see me graduate high school. He's not going to see me graduate university. He's never going to see me get married. He'll never meet his grandchildren. My father is gone. And like, and then just the weight of it just hit me. And so I started crying on my way up. Everybody thinks I'm crying because I'm happy. I'm crying because I'm having an existential crisis. I can't even, to this day, I still have the certificate, and you can see the tear stains on the lettering. Right. Because I cried onto the certificate. Anyway, on my walk back, I realized that the chair actually wasn't empty, that it was occupied. You just couldn't see the person sitting in it. And that, I think, was kind of my first thoughts on this. But your father's always going to be with you paths.
Yeah. That's quite something. So moving into your teen years, you had an incident that left you medically paralyzed at the age of 17.
Yep. New Year's Eve, 1996. I was the designated driver for all my friends going to the different parties. And I was in a band, so we played a New Year's Eve gig, got everybody home, and then I went to a couple of after parties and made sure everybody kind of got to where they needed to be, came home, fell asleep probably about 4 a.m., woke up as, you know, most teenagers do, to the smell of bacon upstairs, mom cooking New Year's Day, and it was probably like 10 or 11. Tried to get out of bed, and, you know, have you ever fallen asleep on your arm?
Yeah.
And you know, you get the numb, and then you have to like shake it in, and then all the nerves fire, and it's like burning, and you're like, oh,
yeah.
But just before the pins and needles, that rubber arm feeling where you have like, you can move it, but you can't feel it, and the movement is exaggerated because it's rubbery.
Right. Yeah.
I got out of bed thinking that I had just slept weird, which, by the way, it ends up I did do. I did sleep weird on my neck, and I couldn't feel my arm. I couldn't feel my leg, and I figured I'd just like rubber arm shake it out.
Sure. Yeah. Shake it out and get back.
It never came back. So I had this weird preambulation going up the stairs, and mom could hear me kind of doing this weird thump walking up the stairs. And I started brushing my teeth, and she's looking at me. She's like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And when I moved my head, I drooled a little bit over onto my chest. And I looked down, and I had toothpaste pouring out of my face and all down my chest, and I couldn't feel it. And it wasn't until it got over here that I'm like, what is wrong? And then I'm looking in the mirror. I'm like, what is going on here? And I couldn't close the left side of the whole left side of my face just drooped. And it was like, just it hung. And mom's like, "Are you drunk?" I'm like, "No, mom, I didn't drink. I was the DD." She's like, "No, but really, Todd, are you high? What's wrong? What did you have last night?" I'm like, I didn't do anything. I drove, and, you know, we played the gig. I moved the drum set and then came back, and that's it. And that's when she realized, like, my eye was doing this weird thing too. Like, my eye wouldn't shut. So I'm blinking out of the one side, but the other eye is like hanging like this. And she's like, "Tyler, we got to get you to the hospital."
Yeah.
And so we went, and they ran a whole bunch of tests. To this day, they don't know what happened. Like, they don't know if it was a stroke, mini stroke, palsy. What was the other thing somebody said? I can't remember. Some kind of nerve, something. The best hypothesis is that I slept weird and was exhausted. So then I just, you know, I pinched a nerve and a blood vessel on my neck, and it built up pressure in my head. And because I was pinching the nerve, there wasn't an auto response to like, "Hey, move."
Right.
And I had the paralysis. It took over a year to to get the rehabilitation for it
Mm.
and to rehab to the point where I could functionally look normal-ish again. I
Right.
still,
Yeah.
I had, I have pictures. I used to be really, really symmetrical, like really symmetrical. And I lost that at 17. Not anything horrible, but it's the kind of thing that I notice. Like I notice I
Right.
smile bigger to the one side. My eye droops still a little bit. Just things are just, they didn't get back 100%, but 98 was good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. So your leg doesn't really work, but you can still somehow put some weight on it and stand, or
Yeah. So I could, same with when you've done that numb thing with your arm. You can shake it, but you can't
yeah.
feel that it's happening.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So I had
So you're getting like no
internal
sensory input.
no sensory input whatsoever. It was really creepy too, because when I was doing the rehab, the doctors would take this little pinwheel thing and roll it over my forehead and roll
Yeah.
it over different parts of my body. And it was very hemispherical. And you knew when it would happen. So ow, 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 as they're running across the right side of my forehead. And literally as it crested the bridge of my nose, it would disappear. Like you couldn't, I could see the movement of their hand over it, and I could see the pinwheel and the little instrument going over. But the other thing is too, like I could have put my hand on a hot burner and not felt it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really, really disconcerting. So, man, how does that spoil like your teen years, like going to graduation and whatnot? Like,
Senior in high school and a lead in the musical, and I had to withdraw from it. I was lucky I had a really good social circle. But even that, like that, those first 2 weeks were really literally and metaphorically dark. I growing up in the theater took a lot of comfort in a black box, because that's how your stage starts, right? Starts as
yes,
this big
yeah,
black box. So I actually painted my room, which was on the exterior of the house. It was an addition to the house. So it was 4 concrete walls
yeah,
that were lit outside of the original structure of the house, outside of the foundation. And I painted the whole room black because I was a teen and that was cool.
right, right,
And
yeah,
so for 2 weeks, I kept waking up in this cold, dark room, and it was Christmas vacation. So none of my friends, and I went to a fine arts high school that was outside of my hometown. So I only came home. I billeted for school. So I only was home for Christmas. All my friends were in a different town. And so I didn't, nobody could come visit me, and I couldn't drive. I drove a 1984 Honda Accord that was a standard, 5-speed
right,
standard. So I could kind of make the clutch work, but I didn't know if I was actually hitting the pedal. So I ended up like it was so weird just trying to learn how to do things. I had to eat liquefied foods because solids would like fall out of my mouth. So I had to drink liquids, but then I had to like hold my mouth shut to be able to swallow. I had to sleep with an eye patch because
because your
I
eye
couldn't
wouldn't
shut
let
my
close. Yeah,
eye.
yeah,
Like all of those things became really bizarre, and yeah, I had to withdraw from the play. But I didn't like going to school. I was really self conscious of how I looked. I hated laughing because I'd make this sound out
right,
the corner of my mouth. And,
yeah,
and what's worse is my friends, they were the greatest humans on the planet, and they were assholes at the same time because they
yeah,
would make me laugh purposely just to hear me, and then they would laugh at my and then I would laugh. It was just this vicious
yeah,
circle.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
But you
so I
knew, like, through it that they still, like, loved you and cared for you kinda thing, so
exactly.
yeah,
No, and I to this day I'm still friends with almost all of the people that I went to high school with.
yeah, yeah,
And we are still in contact. And I don't know a lot of people. I just had my 25-year graduation reunion thing, and I don't know many people who still know a ton of people, and our regular communication too. Like we did the reunion, and it wasn't like, hey, I haven't seen you in forever. I was like, hey, wasn't it cool when we did that thing last week?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's unusual, especially because we're all very geographically diverse. A lot of people went on to do some really cool things. So we have people who live in Thailand, Australia, Dubai, various places in the States, all over Canada. So, I had a good social group that got me through, but I did stop going to class in person. The nice thing
Mhm.
was in 1997, we had the internet and they were really starting to explore it as an option for distance learning. So I was one of the first people to take distance learning over the internet
Okay.
and
Wow. Yeah.
complete
Cool.
my high school. The downside is I didn't actually end up graduating from the Alberta High School of Fine Arts as per my plan. I ended up getting a GED,
Right.
which
A good enough diploma.
sucked. Yeah, I still say I graduated from the Alberta High
For
School
sure.
of
For
Fine
sure.
Arts. But if somebody wanted to really, really look, I didn't, because I didn't have all of the performing arts credits because I had to withdraw from the final show.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. But you gradually got this sort of ability back. Did you have to go through some kind of rehab, or how did this ability, or did it start to gradually come back? Like what? Because our
well,
brains are really amazing.
yeah, it was gradual.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the beautiful life lessons that came from it was incremental change and um, you know, being able to have milestones for progress and having goal setting for what you want to do. Like all of those things came really young to me at 17. I had an amazing medical team that was helping me out, led by doctors Bob and Joanne Corbett, and they, oh man, they took care of me physically, but they took care of me mentally. And
Yeah. Yeah.
at a time when that, like 1997, nobody was talking about mental health. Bob
Mm,
was on top of my mental game. I
yeah.
was so frustrated in those first couple of weeks and months because they couldn't diagnose what had happened. And I remember having a conversation with him in his office where he said, "Well, think of the blessing that is." I'm like, "What blessing? You don't know what I have, and my face doesn't work." You
Yeah.
know, you're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
17 with a broken face. And he goes, "Yeah, but Tyler, if if I told you right now you had a stroke, that's what it was. The diagnosis for that is limiting for you because that means your face will never work again." And I went, "Oh, okay."
Right. Right.
And he said, "But we don't have a diagnosis for you. You don't know what happened, which means you have infinite possibilities of how to make something better happen. I am not limiting your recovery.
Right.
All we're
Right.
doing is limiting your understanding of what happened. Do you need to know exactly what happened? No. Do you need to know that you can get better? Yeah. That's your gift." And it was the way that
That's
he
awesome.
reframed things like that for me, including like he would take progress pictures for me because I didn't feel like I was making a progress. He would run a pinwheel over my head and I would
Yeah.
feel it and then I wouldn't. But he started like drawing a little line. So he'd go it real, real slow. Where do you feel it? And then he would like, little felt marker on my forehead.
Yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
took pictures. And gradually over time, that line did start to move. And, pressure grip things,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
many kilopascals could I squeeze a thing grew over time. My ability to open and close my eyes and my mouth, like within about a month and a half, I was able to close my eye again, which was super cool because then I didn't have to look like a pirate going to bed.
Although that in itself is kind of cool.
It, it, it had it
The the
It
novelty
had
wore
its
off pretty quickly.
novelty for about the first week, and I
Yeah.
would go, "Yar, mother, it is time for me to take my restitution,"
Right. Right.
and it was fun. And then it stopped being fun, and then I was
Right.
like,
Right.
"Guys, because the other thing is too, like I have a really small head.
Yeah.
I wear a youth flex fit hat.
Right. Okay.
Youth. That is
Yeah.
designed for 12-year-olds. I
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
that as an adult human, I wear that to this day. So even trying to find an eye patch that actually fit proper was actually difficult. I had to get a custom fit eye patch at 17. That
Well,
sucked.
yeah. I mean, although it makes for a good story now. So.
Oh yeah. No. I still have it. It's great for my Halloween costume.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you took all of this adversity and were somehow still able to move forward and got to the place where you're delivering keynotes, speeches, and you're, in fact, you've talked. Have you only talked on the stage naked once? I say only, like as though
Yeah,
everyone's
like
done.
what?
Yeah,
Like what's wrong with you, Tyler? Why don't you do this like every week?
yeah,
Why is this not Wednesday for you? Yeah, I just did it the once. I will do it regularly. I probably am speaking in some format 220 days a year,
mm,
on big stages probably 3 to 4 times a year, doing smaller presentations and keynotes for corporations probably another 10 to 15 times a year. and then
Yeah.
doing things like this, a lot.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah. I did 150 podcast appearances last year, and I think you've probably dwarfed that or
Yeah, but not by much, only by about another 200 appearances.
Okay. Yeah. So only, yeah. So basically at least one a day. So
Actually, and not one a day. I usually do 3 a day, 5 days a week.
okay.
I'm on either a podcast or radio or doing some kind of TV interview. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's there's a lesson in that. People would look at, for example, your book, and you have a number one bestseller, and some people are like, what does that even mean these days? But it's like, well,
Not much.
yeah, I got a number one bestseller. Cool. It was on the charts for a week on this obscure book chart somewhere.
Yeah.
But we still get to say it. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it's the point is, like, you put in the work to make this happen. I think maybe that's even like kind of a thread that just runs through your story in all the adversity you faced and worked to overcome. Like you put in the work to make this happen, to get to where you are today. And there wasn't really an easy shortcut, but I like to say that I've never met a remarkable person who had an easy life.
Yeah, no. But, and the thing is the great news for anybody who's listening is nobody's had an easy life, which means we're all remarkable human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that I try to teach with the book and with my courses and seminars and live training. Everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And everybody can learn from everyone else's stories. It just depends on what lesson you need to hear at the time, which is why I say the thing you're afraid to say is likely what your ideal audience needs to hear, because you don't know what seems insignificant to you. Even if it's insignificant at the time, could have profound impact on somebody else, because they need to hear, hey, that, I look back on, 17-year-old me. I don't even, it's a thing. It's a blip in my past. It's not until I have to discuss it and highlight it that I go, you know what? Good on you, Tyler. Like, you could have given in.
You could have given up, So, and I think that's a really fascinating point, because I think just in my own, like, the nutrition coaching part of what I do, I remember a few years back, I just felt so, like, compelled to tell my story, but I was also so terrified to do it, because there was this assumption that once people hear this, like, all of my friends are going to ditch me. They're going to find out that I'm a fake. They're going to find out all these things about me. All my clients are going to leave me. And, just my world is going to come. Maybe even my wife will leave me, because she'll be so ashamed that I'd, like, told my actual story of struggle and overcoming. And the irony is, like, the exact opposite happened. It just, the response was almost overwhelming. Like, I almost didn't really know what to do.
Yeah.
But it just, to this day, like, my clients say to me, like, you're real, you're human, you get it. And it's like, that's so important. And because, like, social media filters our perspective on reality to think that, like, we're all living these sort of perfect, flawless lives and so on. I don't even want to live a perfect, flawless life. Like, I like having challenges and obstacles and things. Like, it's what makes life interesting. But just telling that story, I remember just, like, sweating and shaking when I clicked post. Like, I probably sat for 10 minutes with my finger, like, hovering over the mouse, being like, and then I was like, fine, I don't want this to be a secret anymore. I don't want people to find out, not on my terms. I want people to understand my path.
So that's the real key too, because the information, particularly right now, the information is out there. When you tell your story your way, you control the narrative. And I think that's taking the power back too.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not telling people to expose their deepest, darkest secrets. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
What I'm saying is, say what's real and raw. Like, how did you get here? And don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
And don't try to put the Instagram filter on it. And that's one of the reasons that I absolutely love the before and after with you. Because it's real easy to look at those two photos and go, this is how this came to be. I remember doing 75 hard over COVID, actually. And because everything shut down February, and I, like most people, got very sedentary because I couldn't go anywhere. And between February and May, I put on 15 pounds, which for me is unheard of.
Right.
When I was working on the movie The Miracle, I was doing special skills as a goaltender.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I got to go and do all the training camp stuff. Part of my contract was they wanted me to put on 15 pounds. So at the time I was about 130. I'd float between, like, or no, it was more than that, because I was like 130, 135, and they wanted me to get up to 155. So they wanted me to put on 20 pounds. and it was in the contract, like it was a target weight. And after, because we were doing dryland training for like 6 hours a day plus 2 hours on ice, and then doing like script work too. And
then you're going to wait.
yeah, I dropped down to like 122, which is unhealthy. I was lean. Yeah. Oh man, I was a lean 120. I felt like marble. Like you touched me, I was like just
There's solid. Like no fat left in your body. But
yeah, and they're like, well, I guess you're gonna need to do steroids. I'm like, I guess you're gonna need to figure out a different solution. I'm not gonna do this dry land stuff. I'll do all the on ice activity. But like once we got everything balanced, and then I was eating like a ton of calories too. Like I was like 600 or 6,000, 6,500 calories a day.
Probably sick of eating at that point.
I was so tired of it. I hated food. I hated food. Not in a I don't want to eat, but in a no. Can I slow this pace? Like there's only so much chicken the human body can.
Right.
And it was a movie. It was, the movie. So they were feeding me really well, and I had a very varied diet, so I appreciate it. But just trying to consume that amount was just a lot. But anyway, they tried to make me gain this weight, and the most I got up to was like 140, 142. So to see the scale actually hit 155, I remember laughing. I was like, I made it. All I had to do was do nothing for 3 months, but watch Netflix and eat chips. And here you are. So I was like, no, Foley, you got to reverse this. You can't do this. So I did 75 hard.
Yeah.
And I remember taking the biggest challenge for me with 75 hard was actually taking the selfie, remembering to take a selfie. I had to actually put a reminder in my phone, take a selfie. So I'd get out of the shower in the morning, take my selfie, call it a day. And I remember looking at as you pointed out, that those before and after photos, there's a little bit of a change, physical difference. I also grew a massive beard. I don't normally have a beard. This is for a role. I'd grown this big, huge, Duck Dynasty beard over COVID too, because I just stopped shaving. And because it was my chance to experiment, because who was going to see me? And I can't grow a beard very well. Proof is right here on my face right now. And so the before and after, I have this. The before, I have this big beard and I've got a little bit of a gut, and then the after, I'm clean shaven and a little bit more of a six pack, which is my typical me. But what they don't see is the dedication it took for those 75 days. 2 exercises a day, one of them being outside, doing the reading, drinking the water. I don't know what Andy Frisella was thinking when he put that challenge together, but like 4 liters of water a day is obnoxious.
Well, it's also potentially, potentially harm. Yeah. Most people don't require that unless they're, you at that point you're like, keep your salt intake up, because hypothermia is no joke.
No. And the funny thing is that I've actually suffered from it twice, where I've been exercising so much, eating so little, and trying to stay hydrated by just drinking water, that I actually ended up in the hospital twice with them thinking that I had meningitis, because all the symptoms of the hypoxia are the same as meningitis. So you have tingly skin, everything compresses, your muscles don't work, your body starts to shut down. The second time that I had it, I actually couldn't form words. They were really worried about me. And I remember that's one of the most terrifying moments of my life, is like, please don't let me be trapped in my body and have my mind functioning. This is horrible. That's a nightmare scenario.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, man, there's so many more interesting things to discuss. You clearly have a lot to share. So I think I'm glad that you're speaking so many times a year, because the world could use a little more of you. Maybe a little less of you when you do your next naked talk. Less clothing, anyways. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. And if you're doing that somewhere in Alberta, let me know, because I'd love to attend. That'd be fun. And I will be cheering and whistling and whatever else, because I think it'll be fantastic.
Cat calls are appreciated.
Yeah. Just one more time, where do people locate you if they want to learn more about you?
Best place to find me is on my website. But before they go there, John, I would ask, if they're listening to the before and after, that they give you a 5-star review. Like, they're on the platform right now. They're listening to you. They're watching you. You are obviously bringing them here for a reason. There's content that they're enjoying. And a lot of people don't realize just how important it is for them to leave you a review. It's not for you. It's actually for them, because if they leave you a review, then you know what content is resonating with them, what guests they really like who do you bring on next. And so it's incumbent on them, if they want to have better programming from you, they do themselves a favor and give you a 5-star review. So if they're willing to give you a 5-star review, then they can come over to, because they're on it right now. So hit pause. I'm not saying later. I mean, right now, hit pause, come back after you've left the review. And now that you've done that, come on over to SeanTylerFoley.com. Remember, Sean is the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley.com. If you hop over to that website, click on the main landing page, it's the first thing you're going to see. Join Endless Stages. And if you come to Endless Stages that way, Endless Stages is my free Facebook group where I go live every Tuesday at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern time. And I do a 20-minute live presentation every Tuesday on whatever happens to be the topic of the week from the group. So I encourage everybody to be active in the group so that they get the right training that they need. I will also give you a free PDF download of my #1 best-selling book, The Power to Speak Naked. And we'll give you access to my Drop the Mic speaker trainer series for free. So all of that is gifts to your audience, but only, John, if they hit pause right now, give you a 5-star review and let me know what's working.
That's amazing, man. And if people were to take one nugget away from this conversation, what would you like them to take away?
Oh, you have a story. You have a story, and you have no idea the impact that it would have until you tell it. And, we're never alone in our struggles, even when we feel it. Somebody will not have gone through the exact same scenario as you, but somebody can definitely empathize or sympathize with where you're from because of their own experience. And it takes the brave soul to speak up, to find that community of individuals who have gone through the similar scenario. And by sharing your story, you become the leader. You also control the narrative. So don't be afraid to say the thing that you're afraid to say. It's likely what your ideal audience needs to hear.
Love it. Thanks so much for joining me today, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me, John.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become. And I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.
Anyone can come from any place of brokenness and destitution and build an amazing life.